the parents' movement is very real and it is not going away. I know the left wishes for the parents' movement to go away. I know that they wish for radical social activists to be able to indoctrinate children without anyone looking over their shoulder. They get to make all the social standards lest someone, God forbid, be offended. But guess what? Parents are not going to let up on the oversight here. They're not going to give up on what their kids learn in school because we can all see it happening. All this stuff is now being exposed for everyone to see. Again, it starts in places overseas like the UK or across the border like in Canada, but it doesn't stay there. I mean, over in the UK right now, we now have students being told to stop calling teachers Mr. and Mrs. According to the National Education Union over in Britain, British teachers are now being told that students should not refer to them as Mr. and Mrs. in order to foster a gender-free education model. This is according to Breitbart reporting. Dr. Ellie Barnes told educators in a lecture entitled Getting the Language Right for 2022 that pupils should use gender-neutral terms such as teacher when in the classroom. The 90-minute webinar from Dr. Barnes, a copy of which was obtained by the UK Telegraph, went on to advocate for classrooms to abandon other gender-specific terms like boys, girls, son, and mother in favor of alternatives like students, pupils, child, and parent. During the lecture, Dr. Barnes introduced a code of conduct to be introduced at the start of term and said those who disagreed with the far-left agenda should be barred from the school. The Educate and Celebrate chief also said schools should be introducing gender-free uniforms, saying, don't say a boy's fit or a girl's fit. The charity's website boasts thousands of nurseries, primary schools, secondary schools, colleges, and businesses have signed up for their Pride in Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Award. Okay, and this sort of stuff is happening all over the world. This is not restricted to what's happening in Britain, where they are recommending how to transform your school into an LGBT plus friendly place. Right? It's not just in Britain or in Canada. It's happening here in the United States. It's starting in some of these woke independent private schools, but it's not going to remain there because it never does. So Breitbart obtained exclusive footage from the National Association of Independent Schools. And the National Association of Independent Schools had a flagship conference in 2020 with an hour-long training workshop. And it featured discussions about how to talk to kids about gender, sexuality, and identity. And they've released clips of this, of the NIIS. Okay, now this is what the teachers' unions across the country would like rammed into public schools as well. So this is not restricted to the sort of stuff that you get at Crossroads School in Los Angeles. Just recognize this is what the left would like. And they would like to do this at points of gun if they could get away with it, because they have no problem with using government force. Everything, according to the left, is either compulsory or banned. Those are the only two categories. Everything not compulsory is forbidden. Okay, so here are some of the clips from this piece of educational content produced by an NAIS conference contractor. This one talking about the Everybody tool and how it should be introduced to small children.
With the younger children starting in pre-K, we talk about their bodies, about the parts that they were born with, about penises and vaginas and whether that makes somebody a boy or a girl, but also their feelings. What do they feel like inside? Do they feel like a boy or a girl? What does their head say?
Don't worry, it won't enter the schools. I mean, they're just training teachers to actually put this in the schools, but don't worry, this won't enter the schools. Here is a recommendation on what should be taught to pre-K kids. We're talking about pre-K would be like 4-year-olds.
I had been given a title to a book, so I went to our school library to pull it, and I pulled it thinking I had the right one. I didn't. And I read through, I'm like, this is really progressive stuff, but it was my first year, so I'm like, okay, we're just super progressive. So I went in there guns blazing, and I just went for it. And I ended up talking about the vulva and the labia with pre-Kers, and it was just one of those moments, everybody's looking in horror, and I'm like, oh no, I made a really big mistake.
Well, I mean, but the fact that she even thought that was remotely acceptable demonstrates, you can listen to the woman who's preaching this, right? I just thought it was really progressive. If they thought they could get away with it, they would get away with it. And it was only when people started, more of us need to look on in horror at what they are attempting to teach small children. It's crazy. Here's what they're recommending to teach second graders. Okay, my daughter is in second grade. My daughter is currently 8 years old. She just turned 8. Okay, this is what they would like to teach to 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds in schools.
By second grade, we move on explicitly to gender identity and talk about it again in terms of your head and your heart and your body parts matching up. And does that work for you? What happens if it doesn't? What are the other parts of you that have to do with your gender identity, and what are the parts of you that don't? And the kids draw wonderful self-portraits again, but dealing with all aspects of their identity.
These are folks who are indoctrinating children in sexual fluidity at the age of 7 or 8. This is what they want. Okay, don't let them pretend this isn't what they want. This is what they want. They want to teach your kids the way they want to teach your kids, and you're supposed to have no say. And if you protest, then this makes you a bigot, according to them. We're not going to forget all this. I mean, honestly, I'd love to see any Democratic candidate asked about this sort of stuff. Do you disagree? Really, let's get you on the record, because this seems like fairly obvious stuff. Get a Democratic candidate in a purple district to announce whether they agree or disagree that gender identity should be taught to 6-year-olds. I mean, first of all, gender identity shouldn't be taught to anybody because it's a bunch of anti-scientific bullcrap. But certainly it should not be taught to 6, 7, 8-year-olds. And yet this is precise. The left knows they have to get them at 6, 7, or 8 because otherwise their brains might develop such that they know that this is stupidity. Kids are extraordinarily docile at 6 or 7 years old when it comes to imbibing stupidity and then believing it. The left knows this, which is why this is the age group that they are aiming at. You go to a bunch of 30-year-olds who've already been living in the world for a while, and you say a boy can be a girl, most of them will look at you cross-eyed unless they've already been indoctrinated with this garbage in college. Okay, here is one more clip of the National Association of Independent Schools sexual material training for young kids.
Gender identity is how you feel inside. It's what you feel like in your heart and in your head, just like the language that we used when they were younger. But it's something personal. It's something that's unique to you. It's something that you get to decide. Gender expression is what you share with the world, how you dress, how you act, what you're interested in, what you put out there. And that, again, is your choice. It's something that you can change from day to day. It's completely up to you. Sexual orientation is who you are emotionally and physically attracted to. And so that's how we talk about it with the kids and introduce them to it.
Hey, do you want this in your schools? We're not going to forget about what your agenda is. We're not going to forget about your bad governance over the past several years, which materialized unbelievably fast. There used to be like a 5 to 10 year period before you saw the effects of bad governance. If somebody raised taxes, it would take a few years for that to be felt. Over the course of the pandemic, time got shortened into extraordinarily small bites. And that meant that as soon as they said defund the police, the murder rate just went up immediately. As soon as they said we're not going to enforce the law, massive homeless surge. And so all of the cause and effect became very, very clear. We're not going to forget about that because we saw what happens in real time when your policies are implemented. We're not going to forget what you did. But here's the thing we're really not going to forget about. What your ambitions are, what you guys would like to do. Take control of all aspects of our life, from our banking to how we raise our kids. We understand the agenda. And if that's not your agenda, forcibly disavow it now. If that's not your agenda, explain why it's not your agenda. Don't just tell me it's not your agenda because I don't believe you. I'm old enough to remember when Barack Obama was anti-gay marriage, right? So no, I don't believe you. I want you to explain philosophically why that is your position. Otherwise, I don't buy it. Okay, the simple point is that when politicians say they are for or against a thing, unless they can explain why they are for or against the thing, they're probably fibbing. So all I ask from Democrats is if you wish us to believe that you have changed your minds, explain why you've changed your minds. Because otherwise, I just think that you're lying in order to garner votes. And most Americans feel this way as well. Because again, the policies continue apace. I mean, right now, you have schools that are actively discriminating on the basis of race. And we're supposed to believe that you guys have changed your agenda. And then you trot out the media to pretend that this is a conservatives' pounce issue. As my friend Andrew Clavin says, the rule in the media is when the right does something wrong, the story is the right doing something wrong. When the left does something wrong, the story is Republicans' pounce. This is the latest article at the New York Times along these lines. Quote, when school started last fall at one of the nation's most competitive and prestigious public high schools, the incoming freshman class looked different by design. Compared with previous classes at Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology in Alexandria, Virginia, there were more Black and Hispanic students as well as white students, but fewer Asian students. That is because standardized testing that had once been the key to admission was eliminated. Top students were admitted from a cross-section of schools. Weight was given to poorer students as well as to students learning the English language. Now those policies are at the center of a federal lawsuit filed by an organization called Coalition for TJ with the aid of the Pacific Legal Foundation, a conservative group that is taking on public high school admissions and has filed similar lawsuits in New York and Montgomery County, Maryland. If the lawsuit prevails, it could block future efforts at elite public high schools that are trying to diversify their students by race and income. Wen Fa, senior attorney with the Pacific Legal Foundation, said the changes made to the admissions criteria for the class of 2025 were merely proxies for race. So, says the New York Times, this is the new push by these evil, evil conservatives who are noticing that race discrimination is now very common on the left. The left is going to continue with this stuff. Why? Because they can't even explain to you why they shouldn't. And the impacts of these policies are going to be felt for generations to come, which is why you are starting to see people across the aisle, right? Center-left people, Hispanics, independents, turning very much against the Democratic agenda. Democrats thought they made the same mistake that they made in 2012. They thought that they had created a whole new universe in 2020 when Donald Trump was defeated. They thought unjustifiably that because they narrowly won back the Senate, mainly because Donald Trump intervened in the Georgia races, that they would now be able to cram through whatever they damn well pleased. The members of the media, the elite coterie, the people who went to Brown and Wesleyan and now staff the offices at the New York Times, those people decided that they got to run all aspects of your life, and that all of their friends who are the staffers at these bureaucratic agencies and at the top of these radical nonprofit organizations, they would get to restructure American life. This is what, listen, Joe Biden campaigned on this. This is what Build Back Better was. Build Back Better was all about the idea that we were going to remake all aspects of American life, whether you liked it or not. Guess what? They got their chance. And the American people don't like what they see. That's why 2022 is going to be hideous for them, and it should be hideous for them, and they deserve every single thing that they get in 2022, which will include losing the House, and I think will include losing the Senate as well. I hope you enjoyed that clip from The Ben Shapiro Show. If you did, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you stay up to date with all our future content.